Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks, and today we're here previewing UFC 311, and it is Friday night, so a little bit of a later record this week. However, ended up working out perfectly because we're on the right side of all the moving and shaking that went down. So I'm sure most people have seen the news, but it was obviously supposed to be Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan in the main event of UFC 311. Tsarukyan pulls out with a back injury, was the official injury. Renato Moicano gets moved up from his bout with Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush pulled off the main card, and then Jailton Almeida versus Sergehi Spivac comes up from the prelims to take that last main card spot. So thankfully, this worked out pretty well for us because we've got what I hope is going to be the finalized bout order of what we're actually going to see in the octagon, and we didn't do a preview talking about two fights that we aren't going to see. So this worked out pretty well for us, and here we are to break down the card and break down the fights we're actually going to see. So that's the plan for today, as it is for every pay-per-view. So to start us off, we can start with the news of the movement of this card and Arman Tsarukyan pulling out. I want to gauge your guys' reactions on where you were at for the card prior, the main event, and then now contrasting that to what we currently have with Makhachev and Renato Moicano. Anthony, we can swing it over to you first. What are your thoughts on this new look UFC 311 main card?
I mean, I don't know. It's tough. Kind of like we just discussed. I feel like any time, because I still will say they have a top to bottom a pretty good card, and it's definitely exciting to kick off 2025. But whenever you lose a main event, that's going to be tough. But then specifically when you lose a main event that has one of your best champions facing a number one contender, that is arguably one of the best fights you could make inside the UFC, I believe. Um, it's tough when you lose that. And then we were also saying that it's tough that the Beneil fight got scratched because that was a little exciting one between him and Moicano. But in saying that Moicano moves up, I'm still excited. Islam, it's just tough now when it's so done the day before too. There's no real like there's the letdown, and now we don't have a couple days to build back up necessarily and regain that hype. It's kind of like letdown, and then now we just gotta see what happens tomorrow almost. So definitely I think this card is not as good as it was earlier this morning, but I still think overall they did a good enough job setting the foundation where still think it's a good card.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and I agree with a lot of the stuff you said, and it's more the fact that this card was looking really, really good, like a great way to have the first pay per view of the year. Then you kind of move some stuff around. You lose the big title fight, you lose another fun one, but there's still 12 other fights that are unchanged on this card. So the overall card, yes, I am bummed that we're not seeing Islam and Arman fight. And then to the point of Moicano and Beneil Dariush, I think that would have just been a good one to see what level Renato Moicano is at compared to like these guys who are in the top 10 or so. Now he still gets that. It's just he's fighting Islam, and the odds speak for themselves. I think we currently said opened at plus 600. Now it's plus 700 for Moicano, minus 1100 for Islam. So the fight just is a little less exciting than main event, but we still have the bantamweight title fight. We still have Kevin Holland, RDR, Jiri, and Jamahal Hill. Some entertaining guys fighting on these prelims and the early prelims. Some entertaining fights there. So overall, I still think this card's going to be fun. It's just missing maybe that cherry on top that we would have gotten from Islam and Arman.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. And I mean, that's what happens when you build a, well balanced card. We talk a lot about, how some of these cards are structured. Well, this one, when you have a championship fight in the co-main, then you have a fight that's 3 fights down that is number 2 versus number 3 in the light heavyweight division, and then you get hit with an Arman Tsarukyan pulling out. It's a little bit easier to take that hit. Like, for example, if they wouldn't have had 2 champions on this card, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, this isn't as good. Or like, if something would have happened, for example, that Islam decided he didn't want to fight Moicano, this still would have ended up being a pretty solid card with still a bantamweight main event, still the great light heavyweight co-main, and you would have kept the Moicano and Dariush fight on there. So it still would have ended up being a solid card and better than some of the cards that we got last year. And like for this Australia card that's coming up, I believe that's the next pay-per-view. That is better than like the structure of that card outside of the main and co-main event. For example, if we lose the main event of that card, it's like, oh my god, this thing's gonna fall apart on us.
Yeah, that's what I just pulled up. It's rough after the co and the main, and there's not a single ranked fighter outside the co-main and main. So
yeah, it's an Australia card without Adesanya, Volk,
or
Kaikar France,
no.
Steve Erceg. Like they're like that card is bad. They pulled Jimmy Crute out of retirement for some reason. Like holy shit. Yeah, that card's rough. But point being, this card we weren't in that position with. So thankfully, when the hit happens, you're able to recover a lot easier. You didn't have to find a fighter from off the card. It sucks. Beneil Dariush lost his fight in his hometown. I would have liked to see Dariush fight, especially against someone like Moicano after going against Charles and then going against Arman. Would have liked to see him against a guy like Moicano to see where he fits in the division as well. Same thing could be said for Moicano, but ultimately it is a big win for Moicano because if you can jump from any position or any 10 spot to a championship fight, you take that. But especially in this lightweight division where getting from 10 to the championship fight that's a gauntlet that you have to go through. And he was probably still, I'd say, 2 at minimum fights away from a belt. And that's if you're giving him like decent sized step ups and he wins both. Like reality was probably 3 or 4 away, I'd say. And that's just playing a little bit of guesswork with how the UFC would matchmake him. But still, he skips all the way up to the top. And if he can even make this a close fight, all of a sudden, maybe he doesn't go all the way back down to 10. Maybe he ends up fighting someone in that top 5. So there's a lot of ways this could play out positive for him. And in fact, it already has been positive in some regards. So big opportunity for Moicano.
I mean, we saw a guy like Steve Erceg, for example, last year. He kind of came out of nowhere, no one was willing to fight Pantoja at the time or in the right position to, so he got a title shot. Didn't win, obviously, but he made more of a name for himself, and you see him getting a little bit bigger fights and kind of working his way up more, where even if Moicano comes in and loses, as long as he at least looks like he somewhat belongs up there, he's going to get a big jump next time and maybe even be able to skip. Like you said, 3 or 4 fights to a belt. He might be able to skip 2 of those steps, and depending on how he puts on a performance against the champion that's been kind of smacking everybody about that he's faced.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess transitioning over to what to expect from this fight, I think personally, I do think this will be an Islam Makhachev. I'd hate to be the, I think it's going to be a pretty bad one-sided affair that we have here on our hands, unfortunately. Like you said, Jerry, betting odds currently have it minus 1,100 or minus 1,200, depending on which site you're checking. And like, I don't even think that's ridiculous. Like when the fight was first made, I texted my roommates and I said, Makhachev will probably be minus 1,000. So like, it's even higher than I was expecting. And I was like, yeah, he's going to be a huge favorite.
Since we started the show, the odds have increased in favor of Islam.
Yeah, which is crazy because you're getting plus 700 on Moicano, and the money's still coming in on Makhachev, probably all on his props, to be honest. You can't even bet the ITD, but, point being, like, I don't know, what's Moicano going to do? Like, out-grapple Islam Makhachev? I'd say no, personally. And then if he can't out-grapple him, is he going to outstrike him? Like, I don't think Moicano is a great striker. I mean, Paziv knocked him out clean, and that was like the last guy who wasn't able to, go out there and dominantly grapple. Or no, he's got the RDA performance in there as well, where RDA dog walked him. Jailton Turner knocked him down as well recently, and at UFC 300 and tried to get the walk-off KO.
Should have won.
He should have won that fight. Yeah. So I unfortunately am gonna have to side with the minus 1,200 favorite and say he wins and wins dominantly.
That's right. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Moicano fan, but I can't, it's hard to take away what he's been doing. He's on a great run, even though I thought he should have lost that Turner fight. I mean, he pulled it out and turned it around. I mean, the BSD in St. Denis was a insane, unexpected, just demolishing of him. But that's why I thought that Beneil Dariush was such a good matchup, because it's like, okay, now that he's getting the step up in competition, let's see if what he does against someone with like really good takedown defense here. Like, I want to see what happens when he can't just execute his game plan perfectly like he had done a couple times throughout these fights, and put him in a little bit of adversity and see how he, hangs against these top-notch guys now. And that sizable step up that I thought he was taking with Dariush, well, now this is almost like the Grand Canyon step up for Islam, and I just don't know if his avenues of victory are going to be there. But I mean, the whole he can't afford to lose and money thing, and then he, talks crazy on the mic, which some people really like a lot. So, I mean, this would be a perfect little upset for someone like with his personality and his style and the whole shtick he has going. That would make for some, crazy storytelling. But I mean, I agree with you. The odds, I mean, I think they speak for themselves, and for as good as we think Islam is, or how great he is, it would be insane for his slip up to be against Moicano.
Yeah, I'm completely with both of you guys. I was texting a friend right after who like told me that the fight was changing to Moicano. I was like, okay. He said, "Do you see any way he wins? Maybe if he throws and lands some miracle flying knee in the first few seconds and completely catches Islam out. Otherwise, he's outmatched on the ground. He's outmatched on the feet." I found it curious or fascinating that the guy who's going to be his chief cornerman was the guy who was the chief cornerman for Arman Tsarukyan. So I would assume that means Moicano at least has some understanding of how Islam's style is if he's been in the same room. But that was something that John Anik was saying in some interview after the news was broke. So don't quote me on it. But I mean, I don't see any way. It's Islam finding a guy on 1 day's notice. We saw what happened when Volk, who had fought Islam once before, stepped in on 10 days' notice. And Volk was a champion, a longtime champion. So I think this might be ugly.
Yeah. I do find that interesting that they have the same chief corner. I didn't know that, and I don't really find that interesting for fight purposes because, like, you either have the skills or you don't. It doesn't really matter who's in your corner. But I do find it interesting that one guy pulls out and the guy's replacing him magically as the same coach. I mean,
yeah, that's kind of what surprised me. I was like, because I didn't think they were on the same team or anything, but I guess they were.
You never know because I guess they're both at ATT. So, I mean, if he pulls out a week ago, is an ATT fighter fighting for the belt, or do they call Charles, or do they call Chandler, or do they call whoever? So, not to get too wild and out there with it, but it's an interesting thought there. Another thing I will just say, I had 2 previews written for this card before the cancellations. It was the main event and then the main event and then Moicano and Dariush. And yeah, that sucks. And I got a little bit more work to do now. But I shared that because I was gonna pick Dariush to beat Moicano. So I was gonna take the dog there. And now we're putting him in there with Makhachev. So it's like, well, nah, shit. Not really not taking him. So that's just kind of my thought process of where the skills lie for Moicano. And, maybe I'm just, a little bit against Moicano because I'm pretty sure I had Turner to knock him out. I'm pretty sure I had Benoit St. Denis to knock him out. And I'm pretty sure I had Jordoba to knock him out. So maybe me picking Islam Makhachev just wraps up this upset for Moicano.
If you pick Islam to knock him out, please let us know, and I'm hammering the plus 750 of Moicano.
I am taking the knockout. I'm not kidding. I am taking the knockout.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll take as well. Looking at it, it's plus 175 for a knockout, minus 120, 25, 30 I've seen for submission, and plus 550 for decision, all for Islam. The lowest for Moicano, plus 1,400 to win by knockout.
Yeah. The KO prop dropped at plus 290, and I was like, I think I'm going to take that. Then I thought about it for about 5 minutes and was like, all right, I'm going to take that. And then I opened it, and it was 170. I was like, all right,
Should have taken
Go
that.
fuck off. No, I'm
Yeah.
not taking it.
That's why I think I had all those same picks too, and I was gonna lean Dariush, even though he's a little old too. I did think that if he's just able to stuff some takedowns, I didn't know how Moicano would react, especially. Although he will say he has shown he's able to do it over multiple rounds, though.
Mhm.
He's not like a complete gas out after the first or anything. But talking about ways to win, I think weirdly, his best way to win might be to do another cut or something and do another finish like that. Just maybe he's able to get a little bit going in that first round. It's just imagine it's tough to like wet blanket ground and pound Islam. I just would not think would be the most efficient way to win, although that seems like Moicano's probably best way. And so maybe if he can throw a couple elbows again or get a big shot and cut him open, and then you never know. But I don't. I don't know. I don't have too much faith, but hopefully it still lives up in a little bit way, or we get a little bit of excitement from it. I would say to start the year off with the main event.
Yeah, and just the last thing I'll have here is I think Moicano's like approach to fighting is some of the I don't want to say I don't know how to word this without sounding like an absolute like just shitting on his game. But basically, what he's going to try and do is he's going to try and go body lock. He's going to try and land the body lock, land in half guard, and then either sit in half guard or work to mount. And then when he gets to mount, he's going to elbow you until you give your back. Then he's going to punt it on the body triangle. Then he's either going to try choking you out or elbowing you, and he'll alternate between the two based on what you're defending. Really effective when you can get the game going. It's like it snowballs quick, and we saw that in the BSD fight. But like now, I'm looking at this. I'm like, all right, he's gonna get the body lock takedown, and I go, no. So then it's like, well, that's not good. Then it's if he gets the body lock takedown, can he hold Islam down or advance? No and no. So it's just like, even if you're like, here's the things he's best at, will he be able to do it? It's like, no, probably not. They probably really doesn't have much of a chance to do that. So it makes it really, really tough to be optimistic about his chances. So
Yeah, I don't see very many paths, if any paths, to victory for Renato Moicano in this fight.
yep. All right. Let's move on down to the co-main event. In this
Just
one,
quick question for you, just because you mentioned that you were both going to take Dariush over Moicano. Were you going to take Islam or Arman? Out of curiosity, I'm assuming.
I was
Go
maybe
ahead.
gonna
You
go
go
Armin. I wanted to maybe go the upset pick. I might have went Armin as well, but I still hadn't decided.
I had it written that I was going to take Islam, but the way that I kind of wrote it up was that I thought it was going to be like a very close fight where like the rounds are going to be close. There's going to be 5 close rounds. I just thought Islam would kind of edge like 5 close rounds. I didn't think he was going to go out there but like if you're talking about like betting and stuff, like I thought the line was wide for Tsarukyan. Like I thought the fight was going to be much closer than what the betting odds suggested. So I thought it was going to be a close fight, but I was going to side with Islam, and the pick was by decision. So
Yep. No, that was the same. I think I was going to just lean Islam over 5 rounds.
Okay, I was leaning decision as well, and I just don't know if Armin's gonna win that decision to take the belt from him. I don't know specifically how the rounds were going to split 3-2 or if it was just going to be 2-2 in a super close one. And I was probably assuming that super close one goes to Islam.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I feel for all the Armenian fans in Inglewood who all spend their money for their ticket and now don't even get to see their guy. But
Yeah, that press conference was wild. I had no idea there were that many Armenians in
it's like I think what they said is it's like the second biggest population of Armenians outside of Armenia in the world.
Because I'd seen some interviews. He was like, "No, the reception's been great. It feels like I've been fighting like at home." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Is he just saying that?" And then it was like, "Oh, wow, no, it's actually yeah. Well, it looks phenomenal for a fighter."
Yeah,
and that's where maybe you could have seen him get the upset win in a decision if it was close. If the crowd's backing him the whole time, we know how the judges are with the hometown crowd.
Get swayed a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, down to the co-main event, we have Merab Dvalishvili looking to defend his bantamweight title, currently at 0 defenses. So he's looking to get the first one on his record after taking the belt from Sean O'Malley. And he's looking to defend against Umar Nurmagomedov, cousin of Habib, and trains with Islam. So, like, he's right in there with the crew, and that has largely been, a big stamp of approval, I'll say, for some of the throughout his career. He's always had that stamp of like, oh, this guy's good. He trains with Islam, he trains with Habib, and that always has been by his side. And he went out there and earned a title fight with the win off Corey Sandhagen. And once you beat Corey Sandhagen, all right, I don't care what your last name is anymore. You're pretty good. Like, that was kind of my thought on Umar, and I think he deserves this shot after beating a guy I hold in high regard in Sandhagen. And now he's got a chance to do it. He is listed as the favorite. Let me pull up the exact odds here. He is a minus 290, and the champ is plus 225. Obviously, that changes a little bit on your sports book, but that was the one I had pulled up here. So a lot of indication that people think he can win as a challenger. Jerry, we can throw it over to you first. What do you make of this bantamweight matchup, and how do you see this one going?
The way the odds were for, as you were saying, for the Islam and Tsarukyan fight, how you felt like those were a little wide, I feel like this is far too wide as well. I know Merab hasn't defended the belt, but you look at who he has beaten. He's beaten Piotr Jan, beaten Jose Aldo, beat O'Malley to win the belt. Sure, Triple C came out of retirement not too long before they fought, but he still dominated him and won. Umar, and don't get me wrong, Corey Sandhagen, love watching him fight. Think he's really damn good. But that's the one marquee win he has on his resume. Before that, he was fighting a guy, and I pull this all. Usually, I have like a Wikipedia or something open with all the fighters' names. The guy doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. The guy who he fought before Corey Sandhagen. Not saying that he's a bum or anything. He was in the UFC, but I think the odds are a little skewed. With that being said, he's 18-0 for a reason. He has the backing from guys like Habib and Islam, so there's real promise behind him. You look at what his brother Usman's doing in Bellator, what was Bellator or PFL, however that whole thing is.
Lord knows. Who couldn't tell you? Exactly. All I know is I see tweets about Bellator fighters that are not happy. So
yeah,
who knows what the hell's going on over there?
Yeah, and his brother was the champion in that promotion or whatever was left of that promotion. So he's got a good backing. I do think he can win this fight. I'm not sure yet which way I'm leading. I just have a feeling this is going to be very much a wrestling match. Nice ground game.
Yeah, I was kind of, and even when we did our like preview of the year and stuff, I said I was at Merab, and that was however many weeks ago. And I am a little bit more, I do think Umar maybe has the wrestling to like slow down Merab, and then take him a little bit in the striking to win some of those striking firefights or whatever. But I do think, I don't know, Merab just has this way of, it's the fact that his wrestling doesn't even have to be successful to win a fight. And so if he can just spam takedowns or almost get, like, he doesn't have to land the takedown, but then they almost give control time for a missed takedown more credit than defending a takedown. So I think if he can just keep applying that pressure and always never really let Umar get going necessarily or something, I just feel like Merab always has a way to like sneaky like backdoor one a little bit just off control time and stuff. So I am going a little bit back and forth still right now. I kind of wanted to go Merab, but the more I get to it, I think I probably might go just side with the favorite and take Umar though.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because I kind of have always been a little bit lower on Merab than the consensus. And so now I'm kind of, going, I think Umar gets the job done, but now I'm kind of going, am I underselling Merab? Because that's something I've done previously, and I don't really want to get caught doing that again. I learned my lesson with O'Malley, and I had Merab that time around, but historically I've picked against Merab several times and was wrong. So now I'm trying to figure out, is this another one where I'm going to be wrong, or am I coming out on the right side of this one? So this isn't the most confident pick I've ever had, but I think that one of the things I don't like about Merab is just how inefficient he is. And you're completely right about, like, you can be inefficient and win rounds. Like, it's just a nature of what happens here. Sorry. Especially when, like, if you have to spend 2 minutes defending a takedown, you do no offense in that period of time. Like, I mean, even if you're not scoring it from Merab, they're not going to score it for the guy who doesn't do any damage. And this isn't a situation where Umar's like some lethal power puncher where, like, okay, so he defends for 2 minutes, but then he lands 3 shots and he cuts him open with one of those shots and he hurts him. So, like, those things, and Umar's also not really a sharp counter striker, so that leads you to believe that Merab may be able to do those things where he just throws a ton of volume and attempts takedowns and doesn't have to worry about getting hit. But for me, it's the length of Umar that I think can really give Merab problems. I think that Sean gave Merab some problems with the length. He landed that kick that hurt him in the 5th round. But even like when they're grappling, like Merab was winning these grappling exchanges while being like miles better grappling. Like, he's way better grappling, but like he still can't take his back because he's like physically too short to do it. And now in this fight, like Umar is like could like take the back and just bank 2 rounds off back control. Like, I think that's a very real possibility, and I think that's the way you can stop a guy whose pace is just ridiculous. Like, well, if I just backpack him here, and maybe you chew 2 minutes off the clock with the backpack, and that's you can chew 5 with the backpack. We've seen guys do it, especially longer guys. So I think that may be a path for Umar, but I just think the length may make it harder for Merab to get inside the points where he can really spam his shots and spam his takedowns. And then I think the length in the grappling could give him some issues, considering some of the issues Sean was able to give him while being like miles outmatched. And now we'll just say these guys are even for argument's sake. Like, the difference in between the last fight and this fight's immense in terms of how competitive the grappling will be. So even if it's 50-50 split, and we saw him struggle with the length a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm leaning on for this fight is the length of Umar, his ability to attack strikes from the outside, and hopefully he can move a little bit and manage some range and kind of stay safe. So it's kind of my thought process. Maybe completely wrong because this isn't the strongest take I've had, but that's just kind of what I have in a fight that I do think will be a little bit closer than the odds suggest as well.
I did have the 2 things because, well, first, the other one going with kind of which way to pick was I do like Merab has been fighting the top dogs over and over and over compared to Umar, like you said, Jerry. Sandhagen was his big win. It's also a really good matchup for Umar, like compared to like a Peter Yan or maybe even a Merab, which we'll see, but like a Peter Yan or someone like that. It was, I mean, he got like the, one of the good strikers who's actively trying to work on his wrestling and has been in wrestling matches before or against other competition, but it was one of the better matchups Umar could have got, and then he got a shot off of that, which is justified. So I'm interested to see like Merab's proved his style multiple times now in his last 4 fights. So now maybe if Umar faces a wrestler, someone that has a little bit different skill set than Sandhagen, how that will go as well. But then my last question was going to be, what is the prop on this to go the distance? Because that was my first thing that I was like, okay, Umar versus Merab. I don't know if I necessarily see a finish.
Minus a lot, I would assume.
Yeah, I got it right here. Fight to go the distance is minus 260.
Minus 260. And that's insane for a title fight between 2 of the supposed best people in the division that I think after 5 rounds, at minus 260. But
yeah. It's a weird one because like Merab finishes nobody, but then it's like if his pace is that good, like you'd think you'd be able to finish somebody on like the 5th. Like I had Merab 3, 4, and 5, and I had Merab submission against Sean. I'm like, holy shit, dude! The pace, you can't fucking finish somebody with your pace. This is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I think it probably goes to decision as well. Decision will probably be my pick here. I do think I think Umar's probably the more likely guy to get the finish. I think he's got some more power in his hands. And, the Nurmagomedovs, like, they know their front chokes. Like, Saeed's got one of the best. Saeed is even the best of them all, but He's got nasty front chokes. Like, those guys know their front chokes. And I think if you're shooting 50 times, hell, 20 times, it only takes one clean front choke to get the fight done. So maybe if I had to pick either guy getting to finish by either method, I'd probably call a Nurmagomedov sub, probably be a front choker. Maybe it's a back take rear naked choke, but I think he might be able to find the sub in some of these grappling exchanges. But like I said, probably decision.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it 3-for-3. I think it'll be a decision. I just don't see either of these guys, one, finishing the other. I don't see either of them finishing very many people, but I also don't see them getting finished. So that's the other thing, is I don't see stuff Umar has necessarily finishing Merab, and the way Merab's gas tank keeps going, he's going to keep powering through anything thrown his way. And the other way, I don't think Umar is, he hasn't lost yet, so I don't think he has a chin that is fragile. He doesn't give up bad positions. He kind of just goes in, does work, grinds them out, and gets the decision victory, which is what Merab does as well. So I'm leaning to Merab at the moment, partially because I am going to bet that. Well, for better or worse, I just think that number is a little too tempting at plus around 200 for a guy who's a champion. Realistically, I mean, it was like what Anthony brought up, where we talked about our champions at the end of the year a few weeks ago, and I think I had Umar because I thought Umar was going to get this done. Now I'm kind of in that midst of, I think I'm going to lean Merab when it comes down to it for when I give my picks for the preview post, but it's one that I'm not confident about one way or another. I just think that Merab might be able to use his gas tank to kind of go, and the fact that he has high-level main event experience in the past, because I don't think apart from the Corey Sandhagen fight, I don't think Umar's ever fought a main event 5-round fight, at least in the UFC. So that's something
definitely not in the UFC. I don't know if he caught one prior, but
he is
at
not.
that point,
He's never caught a 5-round fight. I think looking at his career, the only one that went 5 rounds was the Corey Sandhagen fight. So that's something that I also always like picking against, is a guy who has that experience, has fought long fights, deep rounds. So even if it's just a couple of them, I give that advantage to Merab here. So I think I'm leaning that way.
Yep. Last thing I'll add real quick is that I made the case for Umar, but I do want to say, just to be clear, I think this is a close one. Wouldn't be shocked at all if Merab won. So I made the case for Umar, but I don't want to make it seem like it's passionate, pounding the table, he's got this type of deal. I think Merab's got a very, very, very real shot and a very plausible path. So I want to throw that out there as well. All right, heading down the card, we have Jamahal and Jiri Prochazka, number 2 and 3 in the light heavyweight division. This is kind of one that I've kind of felt was coming for a while. I actually had a tweet about this from 2023 about how this is a fight that needs to get made and it'd be a great fight. And Hill was coming up when Jiri had the belt. Ultimately, the paths don't cross in a championship fight because Jiri gets hurt. Jamahal then has the opportunity to fight for the vacant belt. He wins, and then he gets hurt, and then Jiri fights for the vacant belt. So they they both held the belt, but they were unable to cross paths with each other because of injury. Jamahal's got 1 fight removed since his injury. I believe Jiri has 3 since his shoulder injury. And both guys have, Jamal's only post-injury fight was Pereira, which he lost. Jiri has won outside of fighting Pereira, 2 losses to Pereira. And just as a whole, both of these guys, very, very, very successful when they're not fighting Alex Pereira. The only exception to that is Paul Craig locking up an armbar on Jamahal Hill, which, it's not ideal, but it happens. Paul
it was
Craig,
a couple years ago too.
Yeah.
So
that's when
Paul
we
Craig,
saw
I think, alive as well. So
pretty sure that's when we had Marvin Vettori and Adesanya as the main event. So that tells us how long ago it was Vettori was fighting for the belt. So.
Yeah, Vettori doesn't even fight anymore. he's like pseudo-retired, kind of. Like, who knows when that guy's going to fight. But yeah, very long time ago, so I don't really hold that against him. Maybe if Jiri was some jiu-jitsu wizard, I'd have a different opinion, but don't really
Right.
hold that against him. So a lot of stakes in this one. I mean, maybe the winner fights for the belt, maybe the winner doesn't. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try and tell you I know exactly how this division will play out, especially with a guy like Pereira at the top who, has a chance to do, different things, whether it's move divisions, whatever. Makes it a little bit harder to forecast. Regardless, important fight. The winner's putting themselves in the top two. Loser's going to be riding consecutive losses. Probably going to have to fight some up-and-comers, whether it be your Allbergs, whether it be Khalil Roundtree. I don't really like calling it up-and-comer, but you're going to have to fight a little bit down in the rankings against guys who are still pretty good. So a lot at stake here. Jamahal Hill, Jiri Prochazka. Betting odds have moved a decent amount and kind of surprising to me. The original line when this fight was made, Jamahal was a slight underdog, like plus 105. That eventually sat at a pick'em for a really long time. And by really long time, I mean like a month, 2 months. And then fight week, it's gone down to at least minus 142 with Hill as the favorite. And then at this time, we've got a little bit of money back on Prochazka. So now we have Jamahal Hill at minus 132, Prochazka at plus 108. So Jamahal Hill, very, very slight favorite in what Vegas has as a close fight. Anthony, it's your turn to lead us off. What do you have on the light heavyweight matchup here?
Well, I was not the biggest like fan of Hill as like compared to some other people and stuff like that, and definitely was always been more of a Jiri guy too throughout. But I just think due with both the injuries and stuff, and obviously Hill lost to Pereira, like you said. But in this fight, I think based off where both are at respectively in their careers, I think I will be going Hill. And part of that was because I think that little aura of Jiri being the warrior and stuff has kind of run its course a little bit when you kind of continually keep getting knocked out. And unfortunately, he did have to fight Pereira twice. So, I mean, there's a great chance that happens. But I took I took Jiri in that Rakic fight and bet on him too, and that was not a fun fight to watch for someone that had Jiri. But I mean, that whole warrior mentality thing, he did pull it out again, but that's just not a way you can win fights consistently against the best of the best. And I think Rakic too just showed. I mean, we've all talked about it too, but I think Rakic showed that Jiri doesn't check leg kicks, and so I'm hoping Jamahal will be able to take advantage of that, and then if Rakic was able to land as much as he did, if Rakic was able to land that much against Jiri, there's a sizable power difference between Hill and Rakic. So I think with the lack of defense to the leg kicks and the amount of power Hill has, I do think that there could definitely be a knockout. Another one, unfortunately, for Jiri, but there could definitely be a knockout this fight. And so I would take Hill by KO.
Yeah, I'm similar mindset. I just think Jiri leaves himself too open and is kind of too gung ho about his attempt or his attack. Kind of goes for big shots, kind of crazy leg or crazy head kicks, all that sort of stuff, and wears himself out. And the way, as you mentioned, what Alex Pereira has done so well, what even Rakic was doing in the first round of that fight was chopping at the legs, making it hard for Jiri to put pressure on it. And if that's what Jamahal Hill does, the way Jiri fought in those ones, he kind of starts leaving his head open and leaving his hands down a bit, kind of moving around. And I could see him getting caught by Jamahal Hill, who I think has more power. I also think Jamahal Hill has the ability, not necessarily that he would, and I know Jiri does have 3 submissions. One of them is Glover, which I still think that is the dumbest mistake I've seen in recent title fights was Glover having him, rocking him, and going for the guillotine and the takedown. So it was what it was, but I feel like if it did happen to fall on the ground, I feel like Jamahal Hill will have an easier time either getting right back up or throwing some big shots to the body or to the head of Jiri. I'm leaning Jamahal Hill, and I think if Pereira goes up a division, which we talked about once before, or we've talked about many times, that Jamahal Hill is the best next best fighter in this division. So by that status, I think he beats Jiri.
Yeah, listen, I don't know if I'm biased. I try to look at fights as unbiased as possible. I'm a big Jamahal fan. I mean, the guy's from Grand Rapids. I currently live in Grand Rapids, so like, I like the guy. I mean, I've ran into him in public before, so like, there's an element of bias here, but also, you know, I've done well betting and picking on fighters that I do enjoy, like Max Holloway, for example. Couldn't tell you the last time I picked the Max Holloway fight incorrectly, win or lose. So I think I'm fairly decent at, keeping the bias out of some of these. That said, I did pick Hill to beat Pereira, so there's the opposite side of the coin as well. So I'm not gonna say, I won't say I'm perfect. I've been wrong about Hill before. But I do think Hill wins, and I have a lot of the same thoughts as you guys, and I simply don't like the fact that Jiri is tremendously, like, his game is very centered around the fact that he's durable. I think that it's like once you pull that aspect of his game, a lot of things start to crumble. And we're now looking at a guy who's been knocked out
Mm-mm.
2 times technically in his last 3 fights, but again, we
Three.
talked about this when we did our champs episode. Like, Pereira knocked him out at the end of the first round. Then he got saved by the bell. Then they ran him back out there so he could get knocked out even worse. Like, he got knocked out twice in that last fight. So, in my eyes, he was knocked out 3 times in his last 3 fights. So, so now that makes me go, are you still as durable as you were before? And on top of that, he's also come and he said, well, I've been fighting with my hands up, and he's talking about changing his style. That is something that's really hard to do over one fight camp. Like, they fought at 303, I believe. So like, he's had a decent amount of time. It's not like this is 3 months we're talking here. He's had, over 6 months to kind of change his style, but he's got, I mean, let me see how many pro fights that he's got.
30,
I believe
he's 36. He's
Yeah.
30 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw.
Yeah. So after 36 pro fights, we're going to change the whole style. Like, this just, like, if he can do it, credit to him. I'm not going to, if it works, it works. But like, I just have a hard time seeing it work over one fight camp. Maybe in the long term, it helps him a lot, but we're trying to pick for one fight here. And I think that is a flaw here. And also, I think Hill's just got very underrated striking. Like,
Yep.
he's a really good boxer. He throws good kicks. He doesn't really throw a ton of leg kicks. But like, he can throw really good head kicks. So I'm kind of like, well, I assume you're gonna know he doesn't check leg kicks and throw some leg kicks. Like,
Ideally.
Ideally. And
That would make
Jamal is a little bit, he gets a lot of crap for being, a sore loser or delusional or whatever, but I've heard him talk about fights, and I've heard him say intelligent things about like how to win a fight and game planning. So I'm optimistic that he can come in with a good game plan. And ultimately, I think he's better defensively. So I think we're kind of, I don't want to say this whole fight's a race to see who lands the knockout shot, but 75% of it is maybe. Like, we're kind of racing to see who lands this KO shot. I think Jamal is going to present he's going to make fewer mistakes defensively that puts him in a position to get knocked out in comparison to Jiri. And you can say both guys have even power. That means Hill's the guy is more likely to get the KO shot. So it's kind of my thought process. And like I said, I'm probably biased towards Hill, but I do also try and look at it unbiasedly, and that's kind of what I'm seeing when I look at Hill versus Jiri. So I've got Hill by KO 2 at the moment in the article. So that's my thought process at the moment.
Yeah, 3 for 3 on that, I think, for us. So with that being said, Yuri's probably going to come and win by submission tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, I'm usually the Jiri guy to this. I feel like this, but I don't know. It's tough after watching his last fights. Like, in Hill, I was like checking, like, I mean, he has knockouts over Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker. Like, that's kind of what propelled him. And I mean, those are very hittable guys, and not the best names maybe looking back, but then again, that is the light heavyweight division for you. But so, and then I know it's weird. People are like, almost ranking the two by who got beat worse or better by Pereira. That's how they're trying to break it down. And I will say, I mean, Jamal didn't look bad. There wasn't much in the thing. Like, I thought it was good. He just unfortunately got caught by the perfect shot sooner. So we didn't get to see more. But the last thing I was going to say was I just think Jiri would have to fight like at his peak, like the perfect of the head movement and the way he's mixing in his strikes and all that. Because he literally, I truly believe he can't have that Rakic performance where he got the knockout in one still, but he didn't fight that great. And I don't think you can do that in front of someone like Hill because I think you will be knocked out. The durability, like kind of like you said, James, he relies on his durability, but we keep seeing more and more that it's not there as much as it was. Like I think he even got caught by Reyes a little bit too in that first fight, or maybe that was the Volkan Ozdemir was his first fight. But
Ozdemir caught him a little bit. He said Reyes knocked him out with the up kick, and that he woke up in his guard. So he said Reyes knocked him out. To be fair.
So I don't know. It's just as much a big Jiri fan as I am, and I do think he's still incredibly entertaining, and I will always tune in for his fights and stuff. But it's not a reliable thing to keep picking him. So and I think what a way. I think we discussed this too in the championship pick. People may be down on Hill after the prayer knockout. What a good way to get some fans back too by going out there and knocking out one of the other staples of this light heavyweight division right now.
Yeah, and I mean that Hill knockout, the Alex Pereira knockout of Jamal Hill was kind of that perfect storm for Pereira. He got hit in the nuts. Herb Dean looks like he's going to stop it. So I wasn't in the octagon, wasn't fighting, so you can't say for sure. But it seemed like Jamal Hill kind of let his guard down for a second. Alex waves it on and just immediately knocks him out. So I wonder if they do have a stoppage, how that fight continues, or if it does. But it was just one of those weird. Not saying it's a fluke by any means, but it was a weird situation that led to him immediately getting rocked after it looked like the ref was going to stop the fight. And then looking at Jiri, he does get hit. He didn't get knocked down, I don't believe, against Rakic, but Rakic landed some big shots that looked like it hurt him. I think Jamal Hill has more power than Rakic. That's my concern for Jiri, because Jiri is so entertaining and he has really nice knockout ability and nice knockouts. I mean, I think the one that really got me on board with him was, I think I remember watching the Volkan Ozdemir fight, but it was that spinning elbow against Dominic Reyes. It was just, I was like, damn, that's one hell of a knockout. And I mean, he hasn't quite lived up to it. He still did win the belt, but it's one of those things that he does have the ability to pull something out of nowhere and can catch Jamal Hill. And who knows what Jamal Hill's chin's like after he got rocked in his last time out.
I think too, real quick, it's just we needed some juice in this division. So after the Ozdemir and that spinning knockout, I think it was easy for everyone to root for him and get excited. And give or take, he's already delivered on multiple fights, classic fights with people. So, I mean, yeah, he has a respectable little legacy for his short tenure he's been in here.
Yeah, and a couple other small things I'll add is like, we talk about the Rakic fight. Another thing, not only does Jamal hit harder, Jamal has much better cardio. Now that doesn't mean if Jamal's getting hit, like he could slow down while he's getting hit, but like if he's staying clean in there and he's not, if he's not being affected by damage, I highly, highly, highly doubt he gasses after 3 rounds. I mean, he holds the record for most significant strikes landed in the light heavyweight fight. Another thing, like he went out there and you can compare and contrast the two fighting Glover. Like we can compare and contrast how they both lost to Pereira. I watched one of them dominate Glover, and one of them went out there, was losing to Glover, almost got finished in the 5th round, and won off like a comeback rear naked choke. That was because Glover gassed out. Like that doesn't mean that Glover was as good. Like I'll completely hear that argument that Glover was, diminished after the war he had with Prochazka. I'll hear that argument. But like I think that isn't enough to completely disregard everything Jamal did in that fight that was impressive, like things like cardio. Like it doesn't matter how, like Glover could be completely washed. He was throwing back and trying to grapple. Like the cardio is the cardio for Jamal. Last thing, like we said, 36 fights for Prochazka. When we talk about durability and him getting knocked out recently, 36 pro fights. He's been fighting like this for 36 pro fights. Like a lot of people have seen the wars in the UFC. He had wars pre-UFC. Like this isn't just like It's not like he just started getting hit on the chin when he joined the UFC. He's been getting hit on the chin. So like a lot of that doesn't get thought in when you think about miles on the clock. If he had been in the UFC for, 20 of these 35 fights, being in these types of fights, people would be like, oh my God, there's no way he could go out there and keep getting hit like this. But since they were in Asia and nobody watched them, it's not even a thought. So I do think that is worth mentioning as well.
I will just put out there, looking at his resume, I completely agree with you. Like, he's definitely taking it. But the amount of times where he had first round finishes or doctor stoppages, it makes sense that he's made it to 36 fights. But like, I don't even know how old he is. 32 years old.
He's not that old, but I mean,
But he's in fight years, he's older than I'm not going to say a Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo still competes, and looks decent. But
yeah, Jose Aldo's always younger than you expect. But when you think
yes.
about how old he is in fight years, he's always way older.
And then I guess I'm saying the opposite for Jiri, where he's a hell of a lot older than his actual age in fight years.
Yep. All right, moving on down the card. This is our new main card fight that is, replacing the Moicano and Dariush fight. Jailton Almeida versus Sergei Spivac. Man, did this thing belong on the prelims. Great prelim fight. I mean, they had the placement. They had it knocked out of the park. And to be fair to these guys, like, you're bringing someone to the main card. Like, you kind of have to bring the ranked heavyweights. Like, it's just fair enough. You're bringing guys. Other guys would be too early to bring them to pay-per-view main cards, in my opinion.
I was surprised they got it right and actually, had this fight on the prelims, because normally this is a shoo-in for the main card. So it is understandable. Like, I can't even hate. Like, now it's just like, I was like, oh, you guys had it right. And then they have to, like, correct the wrong due to injuries. And I'm like, you guys still got it in there. Like, that's so annoying, but I understand it too.
I'm glad we got something like this with two ranked guys and not how we had with the Bo Nickel, where they kind of put Bo Nickel fighting tin cans on the main card of pay-per-views. That they could have done that with Peyton Talbot.
I was going to say, yeah.
He's another one that they're trying to push, and rightfully so. He's damn good, but I think people would rather see two big guys go at it, even if it might be somewhat of a wrestling match. It's still two big guys going at it, and you never know what can happen in that. Whereas Talbot's likely going to, I'm not going to say he's going to walk through Barcelos, but I think it opened at minus 1,050 in favor.
He's a bigger favorite than Islam. I mean,
yeah.
So, to put it that way.
Quickly on Talbot, like, he's probably going to punch Barcelos once, and Barcelos can't really take a punch anymore. So, like, he'll probably land one punch, and Barcelos will drop, and it's not on the pay-per-view, so you can then post it on Twitter and ESPN, and like, it makes a little bit, like, keep that on the prelims, and you can use the clip. I think that's kind of the whole point of the matchup, is to get the clip. So putting them on the main card kind of takes some of the point away.
I do have a question though, real quick, before you go into it. Was this the featured prelim before it got moved to the main card?
No, Talbot was a featured prelim.
Okay, I was wondering that same thing.
Off the top of my head, if it was or not. But.
Yep. All right, so Spivac and Almeida, both these guys kind of like, Almeida had a lot of potential, but we've seen some of the flaws in the skills. The Blades fight, it was a weird one. He looked good, and then he just got in a position and didn't move and just kept taking elbows until he didn't want to take elbows anymore. Spivac has had up and downs. He's looked good. He's grappled well, and he's gone out there against a real Gon and looked like he saw a ghost backstage, and then came out and decided, oh, I can't grapple Cyril Gane. Yes, you can. Go grapple, motherfucker. What are you doing?
That's like, the way you beat Cyril Gane, is just take him to the ground and hold him there.
Yeah. So these are not two guys I love to pick personally. Do either of you guys have strong takes on Spivac and Almeida? Jay, I believe it is your turn to lead us off.
I mean, is it a coincidence that they both beat Derek Lewis and then immediately lose their next fights?
It's a Derek Lewis effect.
Exactly. It's the reverse of the Anthony Smith test, where you beat Anthony Smith and you can kind of start working your way up. You beat Derek Lewis, you're guaranteed to lose your next fight, almost like Justin Gaethje. But, I mean, yeah, the Gaethje thing continued with Max Holloway, thinking about it.
I said Paul Felder had a little streak like that too.
Felder, yeah. But then to this fight, no, I really don't have any excitement or any opinion either way. I think it'll be. I really don't know. I just think it's kind of going to be chaotic. And I hadn't originally planned on previewing this, so I hadn't really looked into it too much. It's also two heavyweights that can submit people, occasionally get knockout, and occasionally get flattened themselves. So this could really go any which way. And I think that's what makes, at least for me, that's what makes it a fun one to have on the main card, even if it's just thrown in there, because you get Big Mouth and Kevin Holland fighting, I think, the opening up the main card. Then you get this where you'll could very well see a finish into two title fights and the Jiri and Jamahal Hill one, which we all think will be a finish as well. So I'm excited for it. I just don't have a real opinion of either of the two guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either are really that good. I hate heavyweights, but I think like is Spivac striking better than Almeida? Like that's a horrible statement that just came out of my mouth, and I don't know if that's true. Like Spivac striking actually being better than someone else's, but I guess I would go Almeida. He's been pretty clean and dominant in all his wins, and then he was honestly ragdolling Blades a little bit there, like kind of like James was saying, and then didn't move, which was good because I had Blades in that fight. But I was worried there. I mean, Almeida did look good, so I'm gonna assume Almeida's ground game and specifically the submission game is better than Spivac's. So I'm definitely probably leaning him. Now, am I worried about Spivac's ground defense as well and the threat that he has for submissions? Sure, because at least I will say at least Spivac has a little bit of danger on the ground. He's not like some of the other heavyweights where if they go to the ground, like it's immediately over. Which, to be fair, both of them get wins over people like that too. So, but yeah, I think if I had to pick the skill set I liked a little bit more, or at least the ground game I liked a little bit more, it would be Almeida's. And I can definitely see a world where he keeps spamming the takedowns and then maybe locks something up. So I'm leaning him. I don't love this fight though, but yeah, I am going Almeida.
I forgot to throw the odds out there. Almeida minus 470, Spivac
Oh,
plus
so he's heavy.
340.
Oh,
Yeah.
so big favorite. Yeah. I mean, makes sense.
So like the way that I think about this is you've got like two guys who grapple, and like Almeida, like I kind of am intrigued by Almeida, but I also see like so there's like the positives here, and then there's like big like red flags, like no, he cannot be good over here. So like every time you watch him fight, like if you just don't see the red flags, you're gonna be like, holy hell, this guy's good. That might be what happens here. And like I also kind of capped this fight, but like one of these guys is like fat and unathletic, and one of them's like muscular and athletic. So then it's like this is heavyweight. So like,
Give me the fat
that,
guy.
yeah, I'll just take the guy who's not fat. So that gets him to like minus 250 already, just
Yeah.
by not being fat.
Yeah.
And then it's like I watched Almeida have some grappling success against Blades, and Chile didn't really have the willpower to compete anymore, which that's the red flag I was talking about. And like I think Blades is, more athletic and less fat than Spivac and a better grappler. So like I just think that by, you're kind of doing a little bit of MMA math, which I don't really love doing, but like I just think that Almeida will be able to get his grappling success here. Like he's probably quick enough to get inside, get really deep on shots, pick them up, drop them, and like if Spivac isn't just like getting up and making him continuously land the takedowns, like that's what'll be that's what'll cause the problems. That'll probably make Almeida gas and make him quit. So like if he can do that, then credit to Spivac. But like I just think we're pick up, slam, sit and mount for 3 minutes, throw up an armbar, or take the back, sit there for 2 minutes and choke you out type thing. So taking Almeida, but like he's alive in every single fight to just I don't want to be here anymore and just lose. So don't really like him in the minus 470 range when you're live just to accept the loss at any given moment. So
Yeah, I think it's the case too for me that Almeida's a specialist enough. Like he's enough of a specialist where I think he just beats most heavyweights until you start fighting good heavyweights, which I would categorize Blades in there. That's why I took Blades. And then you just being a specialist doesn't win you fights anymore. And I have Spivac in that lower tier of ranked heavyweight fighters. So It's kind of why I'm leaning the submission too. I would pick by finish, so that's why I'm leaning the Almeida submission.
Yeah, I'm going to lean finish for Almeida as well. I just don't know whether it'll be a knockout or submission. That'll be a coin toss when I put my pick in, but it's just kind of all the same reasons you guys have been saying. I have a little bit more faith in Almeida than I do Spivac beating any guy ahead of him. So for that reason, I think he wins.
Yep. All right. Last main card fight: Kevin Holland versus Reiner de Ridder. De Ridder is a new UFC addition. First fight, he went out there and had an absolute war with Gerald Meerschaert. Ended up submitting Gerald Meerschaert in the third round. So kind of like, well, he had a war with Gerald Meerschaert, so that means he's not good. But he submits Gerald Meerschaert in the third round, which Gerald Meerschaert usually does that to other people. So like, all right, fair enough. So like a little bit of both in there. Then you have Kevin Holland, on the other hand, who, if you go out there and beat Kevin Holland, we'll give you a ranked fight. You know, it's a perfect, like, all right, you won your first one. So now we're going to let you open a pay-per-view against Kevin Holland. If you win, you get to fight on another pay-per-view against a guy who's ranked. So, like, it makes sense how we come to this matchup. It's a very hard fight to pick for me because I look at this and I don't want to say Kevin Holland doesn't care about whether he wins or loses. But I think if you were to rank UFC fighters based on how much they care if they win or lose, he would not be someone you rank highly. He'd be on the lower end of that tier, and he's here for money, and guess what? Looks like he's making it, so he's accomplishing his goals. And I also watch Reiner de Ridder fight and go, I don't think he's very good, so I don't really think Kevin can grapple. De Ridder can grapple, so that makes me want to pick De Ridder to go out there and grapple him. But then you watch De Ridder strike, and he's standing there just getting hit by Gerald Meerschaert, and you're like, all right, well, hold on a second. Kevin Holland may not be a world champion, but, like, he's quick and has power in his hands, so, like, he could knock this guy out. So I have no idea who I'm going to pick. And betting odds, I'm pretty sure, unless it's moved, has this as a pick'em. Last time I checked, it was a pick'em. Let me check real quick again. We have Kevin Holland plus 106, Reiner de Ridder minus
106.
So the line has moved slightly towards Reiner de Ridder. It's probably a result of them facing off and looking much bigger than Kevin, to be honest. That's probably why that line moved to where it is now. But Anthony, I believe it is your turn to lead us off. Do you have any strong takes on Reiner de Ridder and Kevin Holland?
No, kind of like you said, this is one where I'd sit back because I do like Kevin Holland. I mean, fights frequently, big mouth, everything like it. We all know that he's not, champion level or anything. So I feel like we take him as he is. We're excited when he fights. We know he's going to try to be a little entertaining. And with de Ridder, that Meerschaert one, yeah, because getting into a war with Gerald Meerschaert, and I kind of like Gerald Meerschaert when we're ranking, like, middle of the pack, unranked people. But that is still a little concerning. So I think you kind of nailed it, and I think the odds kind of reflect it. I mean, if he can grapple, Holland might be in trouble, and there could be a finish, and that would be fun because we'd have a new person to maybe put into the rankings a little bit, offer some other fights. But I can also see the thing where Holland's striking is just too much for him, and Holland kind of gets going, and when he gets going, he's definitely great at building and flowing and stuff. So with that being said, with like both of them having clear paths, and I can also see both paths like playing out fully. This is where I'm just kind of excited to sit back and watch first fight of the card and everything, and just enjoy it. But I would be leaning Holland. It's who I'm probably going to end up picking when we go down to actually submit our picks.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning Holland as well at the moment. RDR obviously has the ground game. Holland showed his ground game in a couple fights, especially the one against Hamzat where he got rolled around for 45 seconds. So if anything showed, I don't trust Kevin Holland on the ground. I know Hamzat's a monster, but against anybody, it's just not one of those things. And maybe he does have some submission he does have some submission ability, and that might be something that could surprise. He could surprise RDR with some sort of submission, but I think if this stays on the feet, where all fights start is on the feet, massive advantage to Kevin Holland because I think Kevin Holland's a far better striker than Gerald Meerschaert at this point in the 37-year-old's career. And he was piecing up RDR.
Yeah.
It's a wild state.
I was going to say Holland could be 45 and his striking might be better than Gerald Meerschaert's.
That's what I mean. And
yeah.
You should be able to piece him up comfortably on the feet. And also, when I'm picking a fight that like this, where I really can see it going so many different ways, I think about if one of these guys, if the winner or whoever wins, who would they fight as far as ranked guys go next, and what kind of would they be able to compete with them? I see a lot more guys who I think Kevin Holland could compete with, not necessarily beat in the middleweight at the low part of the middleweight division, than I do RDR. Or guys I could see them matching up with Kevin Holland than RDR. So.
The last thing I want to say real quick is I know RDR came in with some hype too, though, from a specific like subset of fans. It wasn't like, one of the biggest hype trains ever coming over. So this is another fight too, just as a litmus test too, to see how he does look, to where I would be excited to just watch one more RDR fight before I fully base like opinion, like, okay, do I think he's good? Do I think he's mid, or do I think he's bad? So that's one of the other intriguing things for me, is because it's kind of easy to look good against Holland at times. Like I'm saying, it's not the toughest matchup too. It should be entertaining. But at the same time, we've seen Holland's been able to pack some people up pretty easily too. So I think it is a really good litmus test for him as well.
Yeah. For example, Brunson and Vettori, both those guys in the, like, you put them against Izzy and you're like, these guys suck. You put them against Kevin Holland and you're like, oh, wow, they're dominating in the grappling. And both those guys are strikers. Like, it's not like I'm picking like one guy. It was like a jiu-jitsu guy. Like, they're both gonna go out there and try and beat you on the feet. And that's kind of where Kevin Holland sits. Like, he can make some guys who can grapple look really, really good. And like you said, Anthony, Renato Ritter had hype as well. So like you said, it was a certain subset of fans. The fans were the MMA nerds who saw a guy doing jiu-jitsu and won championship. He had 2 belts, and oh my God, Renato Ritter. Sometimes those people get it right. Sometimes those people fall in love with the wrong fighter. Those same people love Magomed Ankalaev. I bet there's a big crossover between Renato Ritter fans and Magomed Ankalaev fans, only because they think they're smarter than everyone else. Right. So based on that, I kind of hope Kevin Holland just goes out there and knocks him out.
I also want to put it out there. There was all that talk about him being the 2-division champion. RDR in his last 2 fights lost both belts he had to the same guy, who promptly went and lost his title in the next fight. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure he also lost to Rugru, who's like, I don't even want to get into how one championship runs their organization, but they do weird things over there. And he was their heavyweight champ and their 205 champ, and now he comes here and he's fighting at 185. So like, I don't even know. Like, can he stay at 105? Is he going to go to 205? Like, my list of questions for the Ritter is quite long. So I'm in the same boat as Anthony in terms of wanting to see some more info. So
I will say, I think technically speaking, he was the middleweight and light heavyweight champion in one. It's just their weight classes are bumped up. Yeah. So that I was kind of confused for a second there, because
you're stepping on the scale at 205 for your middleweight fight, and don't even get me started on that, because I hate one championship, and that's a whole nother discussion. And
so quick side cameo: one championship or PFL? No.
I probably one at its best is better, but you see one at its best like every 6 months. And Demetrius Johnson is gone, so now I have less reason to watch one. So
that's fair.
It's good.
I'll stick with the UFC.
UFC, and then I go bare knuckle and karate combat, and then we can worry about PFL 1 after that. I'd rather see Eddie Alvarez and Jeremy Stevens bare knuckle go in there than watch whatever the hell they're doing in PFL. So
fair enough.
Yeah, I believe that is all I had on De Ritter and Holland. Unless you guys had anything else, we can skip over to final thoughts on the card. And final thoughts section. I mean, there are some good prelims, but we've had some cancellations. I mean, the Almeida and Spivac fight comes up. There's been a couple of guys pull out. And listen, I watch the UFC every Saturday. I watch every single fight. I write about the fights. I make picks for every single fight. I do all these things, and we got some guys that I don't know on these prelims. And so there's some bouts on there that are a little bit not so great. There are some great bouts as well. I don't want to make it seem like it sucks, but there's some hit. I'll say the prelims are hit or miss. That's what I'll describe it. You got some great prelims. You've got some prelims that are, what are we doing here? So, Jerry, I think it is your turn to lead us off. Do you have any prelims that stand out to you?
I mean, I was looking at the odds a little bit ago of all the prelims, and they seem very much -2 and change and up. So it seems like they're all pretty one-sided. One of the ones that wasn't that I'm curious to see will be a light heavyweight. It'll be Bogdan Guskov and Billy Elenkana, who I think is taking this fight on short notice after Johnny Walker pulled out. Johnny Walker was meant to fight Bogdan and I guess got hurt or something, or I assume he got hurt. But I'm just curious. This guy's making his UFC debut. See how he does against the number 13 ranked guy in your division. It is light heavyweight, so honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and wins. But that's kind of the one that I'm looking at. Peyton Talbot's the big name, but like you said earlier, that's going to be a snooze fest. The only other ranked fight we have, I guess, is
snooze fest for Barcelos, that is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's going to be one of them. No. But like Carol Rosa, Aline Perez.
Ranked women's bantamweight do not count as ranked fights.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
She's the one that twerks after she wins, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And she shouldn't be. Just so we're all on the same page, she needs to stop doing that shit. I'm tired of it.
That's fair. But
not a fan of the Aline Perez show.
I will say, I guess my final thought is I'm hoping more overall for all these, with the odds the way they are, we see some fun finishes one way or another.
Yeah. I'd agree. I think definitely looking back on it, I've realized now that with some of the, give or take, like we said, cancellations and some of the fights moved from the prelims, but I mean, the card definitely was held up by such a good, not main event, but main card in general. And so now, and especially if you're already taken from what the prelims were, they're going to be lacking a little bit more. But I'd still say, I think we all agree, Peyton Talbot. But my shout out would be for the Grant Dawson, Diego Ferreira. I think that one should be a fun one. Some great grappling in that. I've always liked Diego Ferreira, although he's just getting older and older now. And Grant Dawson's kind of been hit or miss in some of his other fights, but I think this one at least could be a bit entertaining. Early one, not on the early prelims, but on the prelims.
I like that Grant Dawson and Diego Ferreira fight as well. I think as far as competitiveness goes, I think that'll be one of the more competitive prelims. And Grant Dawson's always an interesting fighter to me just because, like, I've seen him go out there and dominate guys. I've seen him beat Demiris Magulov, who MMA nerds thought was going to be the best fighter in the world. And he lost to Grant Dawson, and they all almost, half of them disappeared. So shout out Grant Dawson for that one. But he's got some flaws, right? He went out there, got knocked out pretty cleanly by Bobby Green. And I'm interested. The Grant Dawson experience is a really unique one. Whether it's positive, whether it's negative, there just aren't really many guys that go out there and operate like Grant Dawson. So I'm always kind of intrigued in that. And Diego Ferreira is a guy who I think BJJ is really good. Sent Michael Johnson to the hospital relatively recently. That was a ridiculous knockout. So he's had some good performances. I think he's sitting on 2 consecutive wins. So that one interests me. Rinya Nakamura is a prospect I really, really like. We talked about him, I think, last week briefly when we were just end of the show, listing off some prospects we liked. I like Rinya Nakamura a lot. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's got to put some things together. I think he's got to work on the mixing of the martial arts. I think you can tell he's a former wrestler. You can tell he's athletic. Interested to see how he starts mixing the martial arts against the guy in Muin Gafarov, who, listen, I don't think Muin Gafarov is a world beater, but like he's like above like all right, this guy's not going to be in the UFC in 2 fights. Like, he's not that bad. So, like, you beat him and, like, you beat an established UFC fighter, which it's kind of hard to hold a roster spot in the UFC now with the amount of turnover you get at the bottom with new Dana White Contender Series guys coming in. So I think it's a decent test for a guy who's pretty young, but very raw in his skill set. So, really interested to see how Rinya looks there. Last one I'll shout out, Ricky Tercios, Bernardo Sopaj. Tercios, a former Ultimate Fighter guy, so his name has a little bit more weight. Kind of underperformed in the UFC. Bernardo Sopaj is a guy who was like entered the UFC, had some good regional fights, was looking good against Vinicius Oliveira, and then Vinicius Oliveira just absolutely baptized him with a flying knee. It's his first fight back, so like when those things happen, I'm always, trying to see like where are you at now that you're coming back from that type of vicious knockout. So that's another one I'm watching out for to kind of see like, all right, is he a legit prospect or is his career kind of unfortunately done because he got sent to the shadow realm really, really badly early on. So just those are things that interest me that may not interest other people, but those are things I look at when I'm looking at the prelim. So that is all of my final thoughts on the card.
Yeah, I forgot about that knockout. He got baptized by Oliveira.
Yeah. As far as like knockouts go, it was like Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje were going to win, or Max Holloway was going to win with the Justin Gaethje knockout for KO of the year. But like, if you're just looking at random knockouts, that was don't get much nastier than that.
No.
All right. That wraps up the show. Thank you for tuning in. Thankfully, we recorded after all the chaos that happened this morning. So we got the full main card in, kind of worked out pretty nicely. And as far as posts go, Anthony hit a couple news posts. So make sure you check those out. And then I will have some preview posts up. So we'll have the UFC preview up and we'll have the best bets up. And that'll be a little bit later. This is Friday night. So the podcast will be up as soon as possible. And those will be up as soon as possible as well. So sorry. So that's where you can find more content at MagnetoSportsMedia.com. Make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube as well. And come back next week when we recap these fights, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and what is next for some of these guys in their careers. So those are always fun ones as well. Make sure to tune in.